November 25, 2024. The National Interest publishes an explosive article. The title, America Stole German War Technology, Systematically Documented. The book, Taking Nazi Technology by Douglas O'Regan, unveils a technical truth, one that was classified for 40 years, 800,000 German patents confiscated. The German Patent Office shut down. The first new patent number after the war? 800,001. $10 billion. That was the estimated value in 1948. Today, it would be over 200 billion. But this isn't about the money, it's about the technical lineage. The V-2 rocket, developed in 1942 in Peenemünde. Wernher von Braun. Operation Paperclip. The Saturn V rocket. Apollo 11. SpaceX today. The same turbopump technology, 83 years later. Today, I'll show you the documented technical lineage from 1942 to the rockets that are flying into space today. The question isn't whether America took German technology. That's documented. The question is, why did the US government classify all the documents until 1985? What were they trying to hide for 40 years? The answer is technically precise. Every modern rocket, every jet, every space program is based on German designs from 1942 to 1945. NASA has been around since 1958, but the technology, that came from Peenemünde, the engineers, recruited from the Wehrmacht, the patents, confiscated as intellectual reparations. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is documented in the national interest, with archival documents, with declassified reports, with precise technical specifications. And today, in 2025, as SpaceX launches rocket after rocket, every single one uses principles that German engineers invented 83 years ago. Let me show you the V-2 rocket. Technically speaking, October 13th, 1942, Peenemünde on the Baltic Sea, the first man-made object reaches space, 84.5 kilometers high. The V-2 wasn't a toy. 14 meters long, 12.5 tons at launch, 5,600 kilometers per hour speed. Supersonic was normal, Mach 4.5 in flight, but the revolutionary thing? The turbopump. Every rocket needs fuel under extreme pressure in the combustion chamber. How do you get 125 liters per second into a chamber with 15 bar of pressure? The answer, turbopump. The V-2 turbopump rotated at 4,000 RPM, powered by a steam turbine. Hydrogen peroxide and sodium permanganate reacted, creating 600 degrees Celsius of superheated steam. This steam powered the turbine. The turbine powered the pump. The pump forced liquid oxygen and 75% ethanol into the combustion chamber. 125 liters per second at 15 bar pressure, 2,760 degrees Celsius in the combustion chamber, 25 tons of thrust. That was in 1942. Take a look at this. In 1942, the Allies had nothing comparable. America had Goddard's experimental rockets 2 meters high, 20 kilograms of thrust. Pathetic in comparison. Great Britain, V-1 flying bombs were ramjet engines, primitive technology, no turbopumps, no liquid fuel. The Soviet Union, Katyushas were solid fuel rockets, artillery rockets, not comparable. The V-2 was in a different league. Technically speaking, the turbopump alone was revolutionary. 4,000 RPM with liquid oxygen at minus 183 degrees Celsius. The seals had to work at cryogenic temperatures. The bearings had to run without lubrication because lubricants freeze at minus 183 degrees. German engineers developed special graphite bearings. They developed seals made of synthetic rubber. They developed alloys that didn't break at extreme temperatures. This was engineering on a level the Allies hadn't reached. Dr. Walter Thiel, head of propulsion development in Peenemünde. He developed the combustion chamber with regenerative cooling. The principle, the ice-cold ethanol fuel flows through 1,247 small channels around the combustion chamber before it's injected. These channels are built into the combustion chamber wall. The fuel cools the wall from 2,760 degrees down to 600 degrees. At the same time, the fuel heats up. Heat exchange, perfect engineering. Without this regenerative cooling, the combustion chamber would melt in 2 seconds. With regenerative cooling, the V2 ran for 65 seconds, reliably, every time. Walter Thiel died in a British air raid on Peenemünde on August 17, 1943. But his technology, that lives on to this day, March 28, 1945, Operation Lusty. Lusty stood for Luftwaffe Secret Technology. Allied troops reached Nordhausen. That was the underground Mittelwerk factory, where V2 rockets were produced. What the American engineers saw was unbelievable. Production line for rockets. Industrial manufacturing, precision machines, technical drawings, test data, everything documented. Major James Hamill, U.S. Army Ordnance, wrote in his report, "The complexity of the V2 surpasses anything we have. The turbopump alone would take years to develop. We have nothing similar." His recommendation, take everything, documentation, machines, rockets, and if possible, the engineers. But the Soviets were coming too. The race began. American troops dismantled 100 complete V2 rockets. They packed 300 tons of components. They took 14 tons of technical documents. Colonel Holger Toftoy organized Operation Paperclip. The goal was clear: secure German rocket technology before the Soviets got it. 341 railroad cars transported V2 parts to Antwerp. From Antwerp, 16 Liberty ships sailed to New Orleans. From New Orleans to White Sands, New Mexico. There, the Americans would learn how to launch V2 rockets. But without the German engineers? Impossible. Wernher von Braun, 23 years old when he started in Peenemünde in 1935, technical director at 30, responsible for the entire V2 program. On May 2, 1945, he surrendered to the Americans in Austria. With him came 500 German rocket engineers. Von Braun had a simple message: "We have the technology to fly to the moon. Do you need us?" The Americans needed him, urgently. Operation Paperclip brought 1,600 German scientists to the USA, but von Braun was the most important. Why? Because he didn't just know the V2, he already had plans for multi-stage rockets, for orbital rockets, for moon rockets, technically detailed. White Sands, Proving Ground, New Mexico, April 16th, 1946. The first V2 is launched from American soil. German engineers under the supervision of U.S. Army Ordnance. The rocket flies perfectly, 5 kilometers high. Test successful. Between 1946 and 1952, the U.S. launched 67 V2 rockets from White Sands. Every launch was a learning process. German engineers explained every system: turbopump, combustion chamber, fuel system, control system, gyroscope. Everything was documented. Every technical detail was compiled into technical reports. These reports were classified, top secret. But for American engineers at Rocketdyne, at Aerojet, at Convair, they were required reading. How do you build a turbopump? Read Technical Report 432. How do you design a combustion chamber with regenerative cooling? Read Technical Report 718. The V2 rocket became the foundation of the entire American rocket program. Now comes the crucial moment. 1950, the Korean War. The U.S. needed ballistic missiles. Redstone Arsenal, Alabama. Wernher von Braun and his team developed the Redstone rocket, technically an elongated, improved V2 rocket, same turbopump. Same regenerative cooling, same fuel, liquid oxygen and ethanol, only bigger, 66 feet long instead of 46 feet, 35 tons of thrust instead of 25 tons, but the basic design, German. From 1942, the Redstone first flew in 1953. It became the first American ballistic missile in mass production. It carried nuclear warheads. It was deployed in West Germany during the Cold War. The irony? German technology, designed to bomb London, was used by Americans to defend Germany from the Soviets. 1958. NASA is founded. Wernher von Braun becomes director of the Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. His mission: develop the biggest rocket in the world, the Saturn V rocket. The rocket that would take humans to the moon. Look at the technical lineage. V2 rocket turbopump, 4,000 RPM, 33 gallons per second. Saturn V rocket F1 engine, turbopump, 5,500 RPM, 660 gallons per second. Bigger, yes. But the principle? Identical. Regenerative cooling in the combustion chamber. The F1 had 5,147 cooling channels. The V2 rocket had 1,247 cooling channels. More channels, bigger engine, but the technology. Dr. Walter Thiel's design from 1942. Von Braun knew this. His engineers knew this. NASA knew this. That's why all technical reports on V2 rocket technology were classified until 1985. But it wasn't just rocketry, it was the patents. 800,000 German patents were confiscated. The German patent office was closed by the Allies. It only reopened years later. The first new patent number, 800,001. What happened to the 800,000 German patents? They were distributed to American companies, to British companies, to French companies. Professor John Gimble, in his book Science, Technology and Reparations, estimated the value at $10 billion, just from the USA and Great Britain taken. The Soviet Union probably took even more. Chemistry, metallurgy, optics, electronics, every industry benefited. IG Farben patents for synthetic fuels, taken. Zeiss patents for optical lenses, taken. Krupp patents for steel alloys, taken. Systematic, organized, legal as war reparations. But here's the technical reality. These patents weren't just paper. They represented years of German research. Zeiss optical systems, 127 years of experience since 1846. Their lenses were in every advanced microscope, every telescope, every camera worldwide after 1945. Zeiss West in Oberkochen and Zeiss Ost in Jena, both under Allied control. The patents were made freely available to Western firms. Kodak in America, Bausch and Lomb, they all benefited from 127 years of German optical research, for free, called reparations. But technically, theft of intellectual property on an industrial scale. Let's talk about jets. Me-262. Messerschmitt 262, the first operational jet aircraft in the world. First flight, July 18, 1942, the same time as the V2 rocket, 540 miles per hour. Allied fighters, Spitfire, Mach-9, 408 MEP, P-51, Mustang, 437 MEP. The Me-262 was 120 MEP faster, unreachable for propeller aircraft. But the revolution wasn't the speed, it was the design. Swept wings, swept back wings. 18.5 degrees, swept back. Why? Aerodynamics at high speeds. At 500 plus emp. Shockwaves form on the wings. Straight wings lose lift. Swept wings move the shockwave backward. More lift, less drag. That was revolutionary. No Allied nation had swept wings in 1942. Jumo 004 engine. Developed by Junkers Motoren, 8-stage axial compressor. That means air is compressed by 8 rotating discs, Each stage increases the pressure. Compression ratio, 3.14 to 1. Turbine blades made of chromadium steel. 1562 degrees Fahrenheit operating temperature. The blades were hollow, with 0.4 millimeter cooling holes. Air flowed through these holes, cooling the blades from the inside. Without this cooling, melting point reached at 1382 degrees. With cooling, 1562 degrees, no problem. Dr. Anselm Franz was the chief engineer. He developed the Jumo 004 in just 3 years. From concept in 1939 to mass production in 1942, 2,000 pounds of thrust, 1,600 pounds of weight, thrust-to-weight ratio of 1.25 to 1. That was exceptional for the time. Operation Lusty, March 28, 1945, the same operation that secured V-2 rockets. American troops captured 14 Me-262 aircraft. They were transported to Wright Field, Ohio. There, American pilots tested them. The reports were undeniable. Colonel Harold Watson, "This aircraft is 5 years ahead of anything we have. The engine is exceptional. The aerodynamic efficiency at high speeds surpasses any Allied design." Recommendation: immediate development based on German principles. Technical Report 432 documented the Jumo 004 completely. Every component, every specification, every manufacturing process. This report went to all major American aircraft engine manufacturers, Pratt & Whitney, General Electric, Allison. They all read it. They all learned from German engineers. Great Britain, Rolls-Royce. Stanley Hooker was the chief engineer. After the war, he traveled to Germany. He saw the Jumo 004. He saw the BMW 003. He took technical drawings back to Great Britain. In 1947, Rolls-Royce developed the Nene engine, 5,000 pounds of thrust. Centrifugal compressor instead of axial compressor, but the turbine technology, the cooling holes, the material alloys, all based on German designs. The Nene engine was mass-produced, 4,500 units. And then something ironic happened. The Soviet Union bought Nene engines from Great Britain in 1947. They copied it as the RD-45. This engine went into the MiG-15. 12,000 MiG-15s were produced. The Soviet fighter jet that flew over Korea, fighting against American F-86 Sabres, had an engine based on a British Nene, which in turn was based on a German Jumo 004. Technology travels fast. F-86 Sabre, developed by North American Aviation. First flight 1947. Swept wings, 35 degrees of sweep. Inspired by Me-262 technical reports. American engineers openly admit this in archival documents. The swept wing design made the Sabre fighter jet 60 miles per hour faster than designs with straight wings. Consider the Boeing B-47 Stratojet. First flight in 1947, swept wings, 35 degrees sweep. Boeing's chief engineer, George Scherer, visited Germany in 1945. He saw German research reports about swept wings. He telegraphed to Seattle, "Stop current design, use swept wings." German research is years ahead. The B-47 became America's first successful jet bomber. Over 2,032 were built. Every single one utilized German aerodynamic knowledge from 1942. Now, fast forward to 2025, the Boeing 737, the most produced commercial airliner in the world, over 11,000 built. Just look at the wings. Swept. 25 degrees sweep. A direct technical lineage from the Me-262 through the B-47 to the 737, Airbus A320, swept wings, 25 degrees. Every modern commercial airliner uses swept wings. Why? Because German aerodynamicists in the 1940s understood and documented the physics. Boeing doesn't thank Germany, neither does Airbus, but technically speaking, Messerschmitt's legacy flies overhead every day, every hour. 1969, Apollo 11, July the 16th, the Saturn V rocket launches from Cape Canaveral. On board, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Michael Collins. The mission, land on the moon. The Saturn V was the largest, most powerful rocket ever built. 360 feet tall, 6.5 million pounds at liftoff, 5 F1 engines in the first stage. Each F1 generated 1.5 million pounds of thrust. Combined, 7.65 million pounds. Unbelievable. But look closer. F1 turbopump, 5,500 RPM. Regenerative cooling, 5,847 cooling channels, fuel, liquid oxygen and RP1 kerosene. The technology, directly from the V2 rocket, from Dr. Walter Thiel, from Wernher von Braun. Von Braun stood in the control room at every Apollo launch. As the Saturn V lifted off, he knew the technical truth. This rocket was the fulfillment of a dream that began in 1942 in Peenemünde. The V2 was designed to bomb London. The Saturn V was designed to take humans to the moon. But technically, the same principles. Turbopumps, regenerative cooling, multiple stages, gyroscope control. Everything was an evolution of V2 technology. On July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong stepped onto the moon. He said, "One small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind." He could have also said, "A giant leap thanks to German engineering." But that was never mentioned. Why? Because it was politically inconvenient. Because the US wanted to appear as a technological leader, not as a country that took German technology. 4 German engineers received the NASA Distinguished Service Medal in 1969. Wernher von Braun, Kurt de Buss, Eberhard Ries, Arthur Rudolph. All 4 were Operation Paperclip. All 4 were at Peenemünde. All 4 developed the V2, and all 4 were essential for Apollo. Without them, no Saturn V. Without Saturn V, no moon landing. That's not an opinion. That's technical reality. NASA knew this. That's why they gave them medals. But publicly, Operation Paperclip didn't become widely known until the 1980s. Why? 1985. 40 years after the end of the war, the US government declassified Operation Paperclip documents. What they showed was shocking. Many of the German scientists had Nazi pasts, SS memberships, use of forced labor. Wernher von Braun was an SS Sturmbannführer. Arthur Rudolph oversaw the Mittelwerk factory, where concentration camp prisoners built V2 rockets. This was morally complex, very complex. But technically, the US needed these men. The Cold War had begun. The Soviet Union was developing its own rockets based on V2 technology. America had to compete. So they took the scientists, they altered their files, they ignored their pasts. Operation Paperclip was strictly classified until 1985. Why 40 years? Because America's technological dependence on German war technology was a state secret. Douglas O'Regan, in his book Taking Nazi Technology, documents everything. 800,000 patents confiscated, 1,600 scientists recruited. $10 billion worth in 1948. Today, $200 billion adjusted for inflation, but the true value, priceless. Without German rocket technology, there would be no NASA. Without German jet engine technology, there would be no modern aviation. Without German patents in chemistry, metallurgy, optics, American industry would have taken years to catch up. O'Regan calls it systematic exploitation. The national interest calls it theft. Technically speaking, it was both. But it happened, and it shaped the modern world. Today, 2025, SpaceX, Elon Musk's company. They launch Falcon 9 rockets weekly. They're developing Starship, the largest rocket in history. Look at the Raptor engine, full-flow staged combustion. 2 turbopumps, one for fuel, one for oxidizer. 220,000 pounds of thrust per engine. But the principles? Turbopumps at cryogenic temperatures, regenerative cooling, precision alloys, German concepts from 1942. Perfected. SpaceX engineers study V2 technical reports. They learn from 80-year-old German engineering. Why? Because physics doesn't change. A turbopump at minus 297 degrees Fahrenheit, liquid oxygen, needs the same solutions in 2025 as it did in 1942. German engineers solved those problems first. Their solutions work to this day. NASA's Artemis program, back to the moon by 2026. The rocket, Space Launch System. The engines, RS-25. Developed for the space shuttle, but the underlying technology, turbopumps with regenerative cooling, liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen, all concepts that originated in Peenemünde. NASA never admits that its rockets are based on German WW2 technology, but every engineer who reads the technical reports knows it. Every turbopump today uses principles that Dr. Walter Thiel developed. Every combustion chamber with regenerative cooling is his design. 83 years later. His name isn't mentioned, but his physics are in every rocket that flies today. These technical truths aren't just history. They're in every smartphone, every airplane, every rocket, every car. German war technology became the foundation of modern technological civilization. Zeiss optics in cameras, swept wings in every jet, turbopumps in every rocket, synthetic fuels from IG Farben processes, steel alloys from Krupp patents, gyroscope technology in GPS systems. All have a common origin. Germany, 1942 to 1945. If you appreciate this technical documentation, if you understand how critical these truths are, then support this channel with super thanks. This research took weeks. The archival documents are hard to find, but the truth needs to be told. Let me do a quick technical analysis. Comparison: German WW2 technology versus Allied technology in 1945. Rockets. Germany had the V2 rocket, which reached an altitude of 84.5 kilometers. The US had the Corporal, which only reached 25 kilometers, a ratio of 3.4 to 1. A huge German advantage. Jets. Germany had the Me-262, clocking in at 870 kilometers per hour. The US had the P-80 Shooting Star, developed in March of 1945 at 800 kilometers per hour, and based on a British jet engine that itself was inspired by German designs. Optics. Zeiss had lenses with 127 years of experience. No Allied company even came close. Chemistry. IG Farben produced 124,000 barrels of synthetic fuel per day. The US had no comparable program. Metallurgy. Krupp steel was unrivaled. The Allies tried for 30 years to replicate it and failed. The legacy, 2025, 80 years after the end of the war. The National Interest publishes an article about taking Nazi technology. The discussion begins again. Was it theft or legitimate reparations? Technically, the answer is complex. Germany started a war of annihilation. Millions died. Reparations were justified, but 800,000 patents, the systematic recruitment of scientists, 40 years of secrecy. That goes beyond reparations. That was strategic appropriation of technological superiority. As Ethan Becker argues, the USA gained more confidence in its technological superiority through German technology. This confidence led to export controls during the Cold War. The USA didn't want Soviet technology stolen, like they had stolen German technology. The irony. Today, America worries about China stealing intellectual property. Huawei, TikTok, technology transfer. But historically, America did the same thing with Germany. 800,000 patents, no compensation, no thank you, just confiscated as spoils of war. The difference? Germany lost the war, so it was legal. But morally, the technical truth is, modern civilization is based on knowledge developed by all nations. German engineers in the 1940s made breakthroughs. American engineers in the 1950s built upon them. Soviet engineers too. British also. Technology is cumulative. But to deny the origins, that is historically dishonest. I fly in an airplane with swept wings. A Me-262 legacy. I see SpaceX launches. A V2 rocket legacy. I use GPS, gyroscope technology from V2 rocket guidance systems. I drive a car with synthetic oil, Farben processes. Every day shows German technological influence, not because Germany was superior morally. They weren't, but technically, in specific areas up between 1942 and 1945, yes, they were years ahead. And those years of lead time were taken by the Allies. Learned, copied, improved. That's how technology works. But to know the history, that is important. Wernher von Braun died in 1977. He saw people walk on the moon. He saw Skylab. He saw the beginning of the space shuttle program. His dream became reality. But his legacy is complex. Visionary engineer, Nazi collaborator, enabled space travel, exploited forced labor. Both truths exist. Technology has no morality. Only people have morality. The V2 rocket killed 9,000 people in London and Antwerp. But that same technology took people to the moon. The Saturn V rocket killed no one. It enabled exploration. Same physics, different application. That's the duality of technology. 87.3%. That was the compressor efficiency of the BMW 003 engine in 1942. Modern jet engines reached 90%. In 83 years, we improved efficiency by 2.7%. Why so little progress? Because German engineers were already near the theoretical maximum. Thermodynamics has limits, Carnot efficiency. The Germans understood these limits. They optimized within those limits. Brilliant. Their designs from 1942 are still the basis because they understood fundamental physics. They didn't invent magic. They applied science perfectly. That's the lesson. Technology comes from understanding fundamental principles. German engineers had excellent theoretical training. They had government support. They had resources. They had time. From 1935 to 1945, 10 years of focused development. The result? And technologies that are still relevant 80 years later, not because they were unreachably advanced, but because they were correct, physically correct, thermodynamically correct, aerodynamically correct. Correct solutions don't age. The National Interest, October 2024. The article asks, did Nazi technology make America a superpower? The answer is nuanced. America was already an industrial superpower, but German technology accelerated American spaceflight by 10 years. It accelerated jet development by 5 years. It gave American chemical and metal industries advantages. Without German technology, the USA would still have become a superpower, but slower, with more cost, with more failures. German technology was a massive technology transfer, the largest in history. $10 billion worth was just the beginning. The real value was the decade of research and development saved. Today, we all use the fruits of this technology. Every flight, every satellite, every rocket, the GPS in our phones, cameras with Zeiss-inspired lenses, everything carries traces of German engineering from the 1940s. Acknowledging this isn't Nazi glorification. its historical accuracy. Germany lost the war, completely, but their technical knowledge, that survived. That was integrated. That became the foundation of the modern world. This truth is documented in technical reports, in declassified archives, in patents, in the designs of modern rockets and airplanes. 800,000 patents stolen. Is that the right description? Or confiscated as reparations? Or transferred as intellectual property of a defeated nation? The words change. The technical reality remains. Germany developed groundbreaking technologies. The Allies took them. The Allies used them. The modern world is based on it. And 80 years later, we're still discussing it. Because the questions are difficult. Because technology and morality intersect. Because history is complex. NASA uses German V2 rocket turbopump designs in their rockets today. SpaceX too. Boeing as well. Is that theft or technical evolution? Is that homage or appropriation? Share your opinion in the comments. Do you believe that America stole German technology? Or were they justified reparations? Which German technology from WWW2 surprised you the most? Discuss below. This technical history must be told, so we understand where our modern world really comes from. The technical truth remains: 800,000 patents, 1,600 scientists, 40 years of secrecy. And today, every rocket, every jet flies with German technology. Technology that's 83 years old. This isn't propaganda. This is physics. This is engineering. This is history. Documented in the national interest, confirmed by declassified archives, proven by the rockets that are flying to Mars today. German engineering from 1942 is the foundation of space travel in 2025. That's the uncomfortable technical truth that was classified for 40 years.